Hey, my name is Felipe and welcome to my channel. In this tutorial, I'm gonna show you how to do real-time object detection on a Raspberry Pi using a Hailo accelerator. And I'm gonna show you the entire process, from how to do all the physical connections, how to install the Hailo and all the needed packages in the Raspberry Pi, and how to detect objects using different type of cameras. And now, let's get started. So let's get started with this project. Let me show you how to connect the Raspberry Pi with the Hailo accelerator and how to connect all the different hardware components we will be using in this project. Let me show you. And later on in this video, I'm also going to show you how to install the Hailo package in the Raspberry Pi and how to install all the needed dependencies we need in this project. But first, let me show you something which is very important and that's going to help you a lot to further experiment with the Hailo accelerator and the Raspberry Pi. One of these resources is the Hailo Raspberry Pi 5 examples GitHub repository. In this repository, you are going to find a lot of information about this technology, and you're also going to find a lot of instructions on how to install the Hailo package and how to work with the Hailo accelerator in the Raspberry Pi. You are also going to find a lot of examples of how to do object detection, semantic segmentation, pose detection, and so on. So I definitely invite you to check it out, and I'm going to post a link to this repository in the description of this video. Later on in this tutorial, I'm going to show you how to do object detection using one of the pipelines in this repository, but please remember there's much more functionality in this repository you can definitely explore in the future, right? And then there are some additional resources which are also going to help you experiment with the Hailo accelerator. One of them is the Hailo Edge AI YouTube channel, and then another resource which is very important is the Hailo AI Developer Zone. So I'm going to post a link to all of these resources in the description of this video, and please make sure you check them out. Now let's get started. I'm going to show you how to do all the physical connections with our hardware. So let's get started. These are some of the hardware components we will be using today. We're going to be using a Raspberry Pi 5, also an active cooler. We are going to connect a cooler to the Raspberry Pi, and we are going to use this Raspberry Pi M2 Hat Plus with the Hailo chip on it, right? This is going to be the Hailo accelerator, and we are going to use different type of cameras. We're going to start with a Raspberry Pi camera module, and then we're also going to use another camera, an USB camera like this one over here, right? So I'm going to show you how to use all these different components. The first thing we will be doing is to connect the cooler into the Raspberry Pi. So let me show you. This is going to be very simple. I'm going to put these things over here. And the only thing we need to do is to connect like this. Something like this. Make sure this thing over here, this hole over here, is aligned with this other part over here, and the same over here, right? This other hole with this thing over here. So the only thing I'm going to do is to press something like this, and by pressing you should see these things are now over here, right? So now this is going to be very well attached to the Raspberry Pi, and it's going to move at all. And the only thing we need to do is to connect the cooler to the Raspberry Pi over here. Okay, now let's continue with the camera module. Let's connect it to the Raspberry Pi. Something that's very important about the camera is that when you receive the camera, it may be with this thing over here, or it may be with this other cable, right? So we need to connect it with this cable in the Raspberry Pi 5, but let's just remember that it may be connected to a different cable. You need to remove this one and to connect this other one. And in order to remove a cable and to connect a different cable, you need to go here in the back, and the only thing you need to do is to pull this black thing over here. And by doing so, you will be able to remove whatever cable is attached, and you can just connect another one, right? Make sure this black part it's facing the thing over here, right? Something like this. Like this. Okay, make sure it's very well connected, and then the only thing you need to do is to press this black thing back into the camera, and that's pretty much all. And now you need to connect the other part of the cable into the Raspberry Pi, and we are going to connect it in this connector over here. So I'm just going to the same way we did with the camera, something like this, and then we need to connect it like this, the black part of the cable facing like this. Okay, you need to make sure it's well connected, but something like that, I think it's going to be just fine. Okay. And then let's connect the Hailo accelerator, right? Let's connect the Raspberry Pi M2 hat with the Hailo chip on top. So this is going to be very simple. In order to do so, we will need to use these things over here, which are going to be in the package once you buy the Hailo kit, right? When you buy the Raspberry Pi AI kit, you are going to have a lot of this stuff, right? And you're going to use it in order to support the hat on top of the Raspberry Pi. So this is how we're going to do. I'm going to put these things over here. Now let's put the hat on top. And this is where we are going to connect the this connector over here, right? So I'm just going to pull this thing over here up the same way we did with the camera. And I'm just going to connect it like this. Okay, something like this. And then the only thing we need to do is to connect, to put these other screws on top, so we make sure it's well attached to the Raspberry Pi. Let's do it. And I'm going to use one of these precision screwdrivers in order to do it. Okay, so that's pretty much all. Now the Raspberry Pi M2 Hat Plus is fixed on top of the Raspberry Pi. And that's going to be pretty much all. So we have connected the camera and everything seems to be ready to continue. So something that's important is that, remember, we are going to use different type of cameras in this tutorial. We are also going to use a USB camera like this one over here. And in the case of the USB camera, this is going to be very simple to connect, right? Because the only thing we need to do is to take the USB cable, right? The USB cable, and just connect it like this, right? This is going to depend a bit depending on your particular USB camera, but the only thing you need to make sure is that you connect the USB in one of the USB connectors over here. Okay, so we are going to use a Raspberry Pi camera module. We're going to use an USB camera, and I will try to show you how to do it using a surveillance camera as well. The thing with these cameras is that in order to take the RTSP video stream which is produced with the camera, we will need to make some modifications to the code in the Raspberry Pi examples. So I'm not sure if I will be able to do it in this tutorial, but I will try to make another video in which I show you how to make those edits in the code, so you can also use a surveillance camera with the Raspberry Pi and the Hailo accelerator. Okay, and that's pretty much all. The only thing you need to do next is to connect the power supply over here and the Ethernet connector, right? So let me show you. Okay, for now, let's remove the USB camera so everything is a bit cleaner. And the only thing you need to connect is the Ethernet cable, which you're going to connect over here. and then the power supply over here, and that's pretty much all. We need the power supply in order to power up the Raspberry Pi, and then we need the this other connection over here in order to connect the Raspberry Pi to our local network, right? So we can SSH into the Raspberry Pi. So this is going to be pretty much all for the physical connections, and now let's continue. Now let's continue with this process. Now it's time to SSH into the Raspberry Pi and to do everything we need to do in order to use the Hailo AI accelerator to do real-time object detection in the Raspberry Pi. So these are the 5 steps we will take in this process. These are the high-level steps we will need to take, and I'm going to walk you through each one of them in this tutorial. These are the high-level steps in this process, but if I show you like the low-level process is everything that's over here, right? In each one of these steps, we will be executing a lot of different instructions in the Raspberry Pi in order to do everything we need to do today. So this is going to be a very straightforward tutorial. Once everything is wired up, once the Raspberry Pi, the Hailo, and everything is connected and everything is ready, everything else flows very smoothly. And all of these steps, all of these instructions over here, I put together many different resources from many different sources, from this repository, other Hailo repositories, the issues sections, different tutorials, different everything, right? I put together a lot of different resources, and this is just going to help you a lot because it's going to make your life much easier once you are executing the process, right? So let's just open a terminal, and I'm going to SSH into the Raspberry Pi. So this is the command I am going to execute in order to connect to my Raspberry Pi. Now, I am assuming that your Raspberry Pi is ready, is up and running, and that you are able to SSH into the Raspberry Pi. That's my assumption. I am assuming that your Raspberry Pi 5 is ready. Now, if your Raspberry Pi is new, if you are just starting from zero, from scratch, and you will need to install the OS in the Raspberry Pi, and you will need to do like absolutely everything from zero, you will need to configure the Raspberry Pi in order to be able to connect to it and so on. That's something I'm not covering in this video, but I created another video where I show you the entire process of how to set up the Raspberry Pi up and running, how to install the OS, and how to do everything you need to do in order to SSH to the Raspberry Pi. So I definitely recommend you to check out this previous video, which may not be available in my YouTube channel, but it's available in my Patreon to all my Patreon supporters, right? I definitely invite you to check my Patreon out, and this is where I'm going to post the previous video where I show you how to set the Raspberry Pi 5 up and running from zero, from scratch, how to install the OS, and how to do everything you need to do in order to connect through SSH using a command like this. So yeah, my Patreon. I'm going to post a link in the description of this video, and now let's continue. I'm just going to connect using this command. It's going to ask for my password, and I'm going to input my password like this. Okay, and now let's get started with the first step in this process, which is updating and upgrading the OS in the Raspberry Pi. So I'm just going to execute these instructions over here one at a time. This may be a bit boring, but bear with me, right? So apt-get update first, then I'm going to run an upgrade. The upgrade is very important because otherwise you may have some issues later on when you are installing the Hailo and all the dependencies and everything over here, right? It's very important the OS is upgraded, so don't forget to execute this instruction over here. So I'm going to continue. In my case, you can see that nothing is happening because I have obviously prepared this tutorial and all these dependencies are already installed. So nothing is going to happen in my computer, in my Raspberry Pi, but please remember to run those instructions in your case. Now, I'm going to do something else which is important. This is something which is recommended in the official Hailo tutorial on how to set up the Hailo accelerator up and running. I have already tried to run all the object detection with and without this step I'm going to do now. I have already tried both ways, and both ways works and pretty much works the same way. I didn't notice any difference. But this is something that is recommended in the official Hailo tutorial, so let's do it anyway. You need to execute this command sudo raspi config and then go into advanced options, PCIe speed. Would you like to be enabled? And we're going to say to yes, it's enabled, okay. And that's pretty much all. Then we're just going to exit. Would you like to reboot now? Yes, okay. And that's pretty much all. So according to the official Hailo tutorial, this is important, so let's do it. But as I have already mentioned, it works anyway. If you don't do it, it's going to work. And from my experience, it works pretty much the same. I didn't notice any difference. Okay, now let's connect again. And let's continue with this process. Now let's install the Hailo, and this is what we need to execute. This is going to install many packages, and all of them are very important in this tutorial, in this process. So yeah, once you run this instruction, it's going to take some time, but just wait, be patient because it's a very important installation. In my case, everything is already installed, so nothing is going on. And once you installed Hailo, you can make sure everything is okay by running this instruction over here. I didn't copy, paste. Okay, in my case everything is okay, so let's just continue. Now let's move here to this other step in this process, to the next step in this process, which is downloading all the examples and installing all the packages and so on. So the first thing we are going to do is cloning the Raspberry Pi 5 examples, right? The Hailo Raspberry Pi 5 examples. I'm going to CD. And then let's continue. Now this is a very important step, and this is something I can save you some time by just telling you now. Before proceeding to the next step in this process, which is installing all the packages and everything, in my experience, when I was preparing this project, I had to run this other command over here, which is basically going to pull a previous version of the code, right, of the repository. You can see that there are 5 tags, and we are going to we are going to download this tag over here. We're going to download this version of the code, right? I'm not exactly sure what's the name of what we're going to do now, but it's like you get the idea. We're not going to get the most recent version of the code, but we're going to get a previous version, and everything is going to be by just executing this instruction over here, right? So we have switched our local repository to this new branch, which is this tag over here. So long story short, this is exactly what we are doing now. And in my case, this was important before proceeding with the installation of everything we are installing over here. And we are installing a lot of different things. I am trying to simplify everything as much as possible and saving you all the details, all the unnecessary details for now. But with each one of these installations, Hailo all, and also this other installation over here, you are going to be installing many things under the hood, right? There are many things going on. So yeah, that's like the long story short. I'm trying to simplify everything as much as possible. In a future tutorial, we may go into the details on exactly what we are installing here and here, and that may be a very interesting tutorial, because by doing so we are going to understand a bit better how everything works under the hood. But anyway, let's continue with this process. Now everything has been installed. And now it's time to execute the pipeline, right? The object detection pipeline we are going to use in this tutorial in order to do real-time object detection using the Hailo. Let's see how it works. So the first thing I'm going to do is to activate the virtual environment we have created when executing this instruction over here. Let's wait a few seconds. Okay, now as I am connecting to the Raspberry Pi through SSH and I am not really connecting any monitor to the Raspberry Pi, I need to execute this OR instruction over here. Okay, I'm going to clear the terminal. Something like this. Okay, and then the only thing we need to do is just executing each one of these instructions over here. This instruction is going to execute the pipeline, and it's going to make inferences using the Raspberry Pi camera, the camera module we have connected into the Raspberry Pi, and then this OR instruction is going to do exactly the same, but with the USB camera, which we can also connect into the Raspberry Pi. But let's take it one step at a time. I'm just going to show you how to. I'm going to make sure everything works well. You can see everything is working well. Now I'm going to take the camera and I'm going to point it at me. Right now it's detecting a person because it's like pointing at me. And everything seems to be working just fine, right? Let me show you with this other camera what exactly I'm doing, right? You can see that this is the Raspberry Pi, this is the camera, and I'm just pointing at me. If I do something like this, then we are no longer detecting anything. Okay, now let's continue. Everything works well with the camera module. Now let's see if everything works well with the USB camera. And before we continue, obviously we need to connect the USB camera into the Raspberry Pi. Okay, everything is connected. Now I'm going to execute this instruction. And in my case, if I execute that instruction, it gives me an error. So I have to execute this other instruction, which is get USB camera. And this tells me what are the USB ports in which I have a camera. I have connected only one camera, but it seems this tells me I have two. I don't understand why, but it doesn't matter. In this tutorial, I have already prepared this tutorial, and this is the one I need to use if I'm not mistaken. Let's try it out. So I'm just going to execute the same command, but I'm going to change USB and I'm going to type this thing over here. Let's see if it works. And everything is running smoothly. Now it's detecting a person right away because in this case the camera is there, right? So this is the USB camera I have connected into the Raspberry Pi. So, but let me show you, if I put my hand in top of the in front of the camera, we are no longer detecting a person. Now we are detecting a person again. So yeah, everything is working just fine. So this is pretty much all in order to execute the object detection pipeline. We are not really doing anything with the pipeline. This is just like the basic example, object detection pipeline example, and we're not visualizing the object detection either, right? So let me show you how everything, let me show you how to visualize and to make sure everything is working smoothly. We will need to do two things over here. This is going to be very straightforward. The first thing will be enabling BNC in the Raspberry Pi, and then we will need to install a BNC viewer in our computer, right? Not in the Raspberry Pi, but in our computer, so we are able to connect through the Raspberry Pi and to visualize the desktop in the Raspberry Pi. This is going to be a very complex process, but let me show you. Now it's going to be very simple. In order to enable BNC in the Raspberry Pi, the only thing we need to do is to execute this command again, sudo raspi config. And then let's go here, interface options, BNC. Would you like the BNC server to be enabled? Yes. And that's it. Okay. And now I'm going to exit, something like that. I'm not completely sure if you need to reboot after you enable BNC. Let's reboot just in case. And yeah, and then the only thing you need, you will need to do is to install a VNC viewer in your computer. In my case, I have already installed a real VNC, right? This is the viewer I am going to use in this process, but you can obviously use any other VNC viewer you want, right? Let me show you how to use it. I guess all of them work pretty much the same way. I'm going to connect to the Raspberry Pi again. I think I made a mistake. Yeah. There. Okay. Now I need to do this again. And I need to execute this other command again. And then source. Okay. This is pretty much ready. And now let me show you how to connect using the VNC viewer. Basically, you need to, in case you have not a connection already, you can see I have already created a connection over here. But if you do not have a connection already, you need to go to new connection. This is where you're going to type the host name of your Raspberry Pi. In my case, it's raspberry pi.local. And then when I try to connect, I have to type my username, which in my case is Felipe, and my password. Okay, I type OK, and now this is the desktop in the Raspberry Pi, right? Let me show you what happens once I execute this instruction again, once I execute the object detection pipeline again. So I'm going to type something like this, and you can see we have an error because sometimes the number of the USB camera changes for some reason. Oh, we need to copy, paste something like this. Now it's 10 and 0, so I have to use this one, which is 0. And now it seems everything is okay. Okay, so this is the USB camera, right? This is exactly what we are getting from the desktop in the Raspberry Pi. This is what we're visualizing, because when we are running the object detection pipeline, the real-time object detection pipeline in the Hailo accelerator, it's visualizing the frames automatically in the desktop. And this is why if we connect to the Raspberry Pi through VNC, that's why we are getting something like this. And you can see that it's detecting me, person. It's also detecting the clock that's over there. It's detecting the couch. So it's like the default module that's using to run the object detection. The pre-trained model weights work pretty well, and also you can see we're getting a very fast execution time. We are getting around 30 frames per second. I have already been doing some tests before starting with this tutorial. So everything runs in real time and everything runs super smoothly. Now let me show you some other commands you can execute in order to improve the visualization a bit. Let me show you. If we execute the same instruction, but I think it was show if something is, we will be printing the number of frames per second which are being executed, and you can see that it's around 30 frames per second, which is a lot. And if I'm not mistaken, we can take it even higher than this. We can process a much higher amount of frames per second. I have been exploring the Hailo already, and I know we can achieve a higher frame rate, right? A higher frames per second for sure. I think the Hailo accelerator is a very interesting device. We are definitely going to use it later on in this channel, in future tutorials in this channel, because we can use it in many different type of projects, right? Many different type of computer vision projects, different type of robotics projects. Now that we have 30 frames per second on edge, and we can achieve a very accurate object detection like the one you can see over here, or even more accurate, because we can also train our custom models and we can run our custom models in in the Hailo accelerator, so we can make it very accurate, very fast, and there are many different type of projects which we will be doing in the next tutorials in my channel. So let me know in the comments below what you think about this video, and let me know what type of tutorials you would like to see next. This is going to be all for today, and see you on my next video.